There is a lot of marketing stuff out there. There's a lot of strategies. There's a lot of ways to launch. I've been in at least dozens of businesses and different types of launches in different industries. They all work,
Yeah.
but they're going to work better if you are on board with what you're doing. So
Yeah.
this is the whole, it seems overly simple to say that the effectiveness of your launch strategy depends on how much you like it and how much you
Yeah.
resonate with it, but it's true.
Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. If you're a sensitive, creative, healing practitioner, or purpose-driven entrepreneur, then whether you call it a launch or not, you're constantly putting your work out into the world. And let's be real, that can bring up a lot of panic. Sharing your offers, opening enrollment, announcing something new, it's vulnerable. And the way traditional marketing teaches us to do it is often overwhelming, dysregulating, and just not made for sensitive nervous systems. But what if launching didn't have to feel like a giant pressure cooker or a performance? What if you could feel more grounded, more intuitive, more like yourself? That's exactly what today's guest, Danielle Weil, is here to talk about. Danielle is a copy and marketing strategist and the creator of LaunchFlow, a method that helps expert business owners build fun, sustainable launches that actually work without burning them out. She's written dozens of 6- and 7-figure launches, generating over 170 million in sales. But her real genius is helping clients create momentum without overriding their nervous system in the process. In this episode, we explore what energy flow really means and how it applies to launching, the subtle signs that your strategy is out of sync with your natural rhythm, why your resistance or burnout might not be a mindset problem, but a misalignment, the common launch traps that sensitive entrepreneurs fall into, and how to shift out of them, and how Danielle helps her clients reconnect to their vision, their voice, and their why. If you've ever felt like launching drains the life out of you, or that your strategy asks you to show up in a way that just doesn't feel like you, this conversation is a gentle, grounded invitation to try a different way. Let's get into it. Danielle, I'm so delighted to see you again. We got to meet just recently and got along like a house on fire. And I'm so happy to have you here on the show so that listeners can meet you too. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm super excited selfishly to have this conversation with you because I get to pick your brain and ask you all the questions. Um, And just to start with, for the listeners who haven't met you yet, could you share a little bit about what you do and who you help?
Sure. So I am a launch strategist, marketing expert. I've been a copywriter for 20 years, and I mostly help business owners selling their expertise have a launch that it's predictable, coordinated, profitable, in flow without having to sort of twist yourself in knots following someone else's blueprint. And I really help them figure out the offer, narrative, model, and launch strategy that works for them.
Amazing. And who tend to be the types that you work with? Like, is this is this healers? Is this copywriters? Is this a whole range?
It's really anybody who is packaging and selling their expertise, whether it is in a group program in an online format. I've had some photographers and artists come through my program because they're also selling their expertise in a way. I have in my current cohort a boutique hotel owner. So
Oh, cool.
really mostly coaches and consultants and sort of that, expert market, but also anyone who is packaging and selling something and launching it.
That's cool. I love that there's such a variety because I love interdisciplinary conversations. We can always broaden our lens so much by having them.
Definitely.
Um, and I know that you're passionate about what you do, and like myself and most people who do what they love for work, we usually don't come to these career paths because we, looked at a list of careers in college. Like it's usually through some confluence of personal experiences and turning
Mhm.
points in our lives. Could you share in as much or little detail as you'd like to, what was the path that got you here?
Sure. So I have a degree in English literature. What do you do with a BA in English? Apparently, you become a copywriter. I got into that in a roundabout way by accident in college and realized when I wanted to move to Israel. Uh, and I live here. I've been here for the past almost 17 years now. I realized that it was a great career to take with me. And so that is how I fell into it. And in 2015, I started writing specifically launch copy. So I've written a lot of launch copy. And around 2019 is when I started my own programs to help business owners, my own coaching business.
Amazing. And what does your work mean to you now? Like I know it's not just something that pays the rent. Like what what about it lights you up the most? What are those moments where you're like, "Oh, this is completely what I meant to be doing?"
I mean, you and I had a chat before this,
Yeah.
right? And you saw the thing that I love digging into the most is solving exactly what I solve in my programs, which is
Yeah.
what is the story that we're telling about this offer? How can we launch it better? How is it aligning with your business and what you want? And is it serving you? And when I get to dig into those problems, even beyond just writing copy, although I enjoy that as well, um, that is my happy place. And so I'm lucky enough that I get to be in that place most of the time.
It's so cool. Like the conversation that we had, it lit me up and I felt like, "Oh my goodness, I'm like in the middle of my own like cloud of fog and you just shined a flashlight right through it with such clarity." And I feel like you have this talent for doing that on a strategy level and like my realm is, doing that on an emotional level just to really simplify things. I'm sure we both cross over into the other category too, but uh I know like it lit me up to just feel seen and like have someone help me understand what my story was better.
Yeah.
Um, and I can only imagine what the thrill is for you as you're like seeing the person absorb the clarity.
I think that the thing that I'm struck by over and over again is how much people say, "Oh, I'm not a writer. I'm really having trouble figuring out, what to say, how to say it." And then we're having a conversation. I'm asking the right questions, and the word perfect copy literally just pours out of them.
I
And I'm
relate
like,
to that.
"I'm glad
Yes.
we're recording this. Say that."
I love hearing you say that. I feel like I've had this similar conversation with so many clients because I also some of the folks I work with are entrepreneurs, many of them are creatives. And I have this similar conversation where they're like, just spilling their guts to me. And then they're like, but I don't know how to express this in writing. And I'm like, but you just expressed it verbally. Or sometimes it's like an email that they sent me. And I'm like, but you just did express it in writing. It's right here in front of me.
And I think the thing is it's two different modalities, right?
Yeah.
The thinking and speaking and writing. And sure, there's some overlap, and some people are naturally better at expressing themselves in writing when they can take the time to choose the words. And others, we spend most of our time speaking and less writing. So I think it's a more practiced skill and it's easier for stuff to just flow out in speaking it. So
Yeah.
don't, if you are trying to write something, maybe try talking it first.
So you just said the word flow, and this taps into the there's so many different topics you and I could talk about, but we identified one that we were both excited about. And it was this idea of energy flow and launching, which is something that you teach about in your program. And I'd love to dive into that, starting with the most basic of questions, which is what do you mean by energy flow and launching? What is energy flow to you? And what does it have to do with launching an offer, putting your offer, your work, your expertise out into the world?
Sure. So I actually trademarked the term LaunchFlow. That's the name of my program. And the idea is that there are 5 different flows that need to be in alignment for a launch to work. And one of them is energy flow. And it's one that tends to be overlooked. But if you are feeling, as you are doing anything in your business, feelings of avoidance, dread, depression, exhaustion, not just procrastination, like, ooh, I don't really want to do this, but real, ooh, visceral nervous system ick,
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
like
Mhm.
launch funk,
Yeah.
that we something is not working, right? And
Yeah.
it's not the feeling of, okay, this is something I really want in my business and I'm coming up against, maybe a little bit of fear and apprehension and anxiety and limiting beliefs. It's not necessarily that. It's something that's making you really uncomfortable. Something like pushy tactics that we tend to be taught, oh, just use this template, but it feels nothing like me. Saying something that's not necessarily a deadline, that's not really a deadline. Any of these tactics that we're taught to use that really, I think, for a lot of people feel uncomfortable and creates this feeling of uncomfortableness in your
Yeah.
body. And then when you're expected to show up and market like that, don't you think the people that you're talking to are going to feel that you are uncomfortable? So that to me is energy flow. When it's there, though, people feel it. They
Yeah.
resonate. They see how into it you are. They see how confident you are in your offer. They feel all of it when it's there, and you feel it too. You're like, "Oh yeah, I'm excited to come and deliver this thing. I'm excited to talk about what I do." So that's how I see it.
I love this topic so, so much. And I think like what you just described is so naturally flows from what we were talking about just earlier. Like, when your client is describing, is just talking to you and answering your questions, they're communicating in a way that feels in flow and it's organic and it connects and it feels right to both people. But then like when they're going to write marketing copy, it's like the brain is like, this must follow a formula, and things get all nervous system ick feeling, like you were saying.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm curious, like, I deal a lot with working through fear with my coaching clients. And oftentimes it's the other kind of fear that you mentioned, where it's like they really really want something, and then they want to put themselves out there in some way, and because they care about it a lot, naturally there's fear that comes in, and we work through that fear together. But how do you tell the difference? Like, how does a person discern, is this just like natural fear of visibility that I'm dealing with and I just need help moving through it? Or this is like something is out of alignment, it's not in flow, it's nervous system ick.
So I'll give you an example, I think, for my own business, because this was really clear to me. I signed up a couple of years ago for a coaching program that was supposed to solve everything in my business, right? It was supposed to solve everything. The marketing was on point, did exactly what I wanted. I was like, okay, great, let's do it. And the curriculum was very well laid out. It was a very well organized program. And yet there was one very specific launch format that was being taught. It was like, okay, do it this way. Everything is templated, everything is structured, and I'm doing it. And it calls for doing live stream videos to social media.
Yeah.
So I've got one camera here, I've got one camera here, I've got my phone over here, and I'm talking, and there's nobody on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a delay, right? So even anybody who comments is like, and I'm not seeing the comment, and it's just awkward
Yeah.
city. I am not
Yeah.
showing up as my best self. I don't feel like I'm showing up as my best self. It's awkward AF, as the kids say. and and after doing it and predictably not getting any results, I was like almost depressed at my business. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in this black hole of despair, until I actually sat down with it and realized you should not be launching this way. You need people in a room. You need to see the people on the other side who you're talking to, have that conversation with them, have them tell you, you do best, Danielle, when you are teaching and showing and giving examples, and that is how you should launch.
Yeah.
And that is what I did when I launched my next program.
Yeah.
And voila, it felt different. I still had that, feeling of like, oh, I'm a little nervous about this. I don't know how it's going to go. Is it going to work? Is it not? But it wasn't the I hate my business feeling that I had with that other program.
I love that. It's so funny, like hearing that, it makes me think of so I've worked with various business coaches along the way, and I'm working with one presently. And like, it's so funny the way my brain interprets things. Like anytime she like, encourages me to put my offer out there and blah, blah, blah way that she'll describe. And she's not saying this, but my brain is interpreting it as like, oh, I need to like communicate in a way that I feel super uncomfortable with. Like I need to get on live stages, which is not my realm of comfort. I love podcasting. That podcasting is like, feels like my living room. I do podcasting. I like being on other people's podcasts. It's just very comfortable for me. So like, why not just stick with that? But for some reason, my brain is like, oh no, you need to do the thing that makes you really uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're not going to be effective, which doesn't
So
make sense.
can I tell you a secret?
Yes, please.
There is a lot of marketing stuff out there. There's a lot of strategies. There's a lot of ways to launch. I've been in at least dozens of businesses and different types of launches in different industries. They all work,
Yeah.
but they're going to work better if you are on board with what you're doing. And so
Yeah.
this is it seems overly simple to say that the effectiveness of your launch strategy depends on how much you like it and how much you
Yeah.
resonate with it, but it's true.
And I think that's kind of weirdly a tough pill to swallow for a lot of us. Like it should be candy, right? It's like, yes. And, I think it is a relief once we get used to the idea, but it's so opposite of how a lot of us were trained, whether consciously or unconsciously.
And I think it's a little scary, actually. This is something that
Totally.
hasn't occurred to me until just now, so thank you for that. But I think it
Yeah.
is. I think we're comforted by the programs and the people who tell us, just follow my step-by-step process and you will get XYZ results. That's all you have to do. But it takes you out of the equation. But
Yeah.
that's the part that could be scary, the vulnerability, okay, is this right? I don't know if this is right. It feels right. And when you teach people about trusting yourself, that's really where it lands.
Yes, and so many of us have, had like formative experiences where we were rewarded for following rules and punished in some way for following our gut, like, going off the prescribed path.
Just just had a moment there of,
Yeah.
wow, okay.
um so tell me if you feel like we've covered this already, because I think you have gone into this, but is there more you would like to say about what are the telltale signs that your launch strategy is out of alignment with your energy flow? I know you mentioned like feeling lethargic or just that nervous system ick. I don't know if there's any more to that.
I mean, your results, right? If something is working in your business and you hate it, that's one thing. That's a different conversation. But generally, if something's not working, you are going to have not good feelings about it and therefore create this vicious cycle of not goodness. Sorry about the sophisticated vocabulary there.
I love that. I especially love the nervous system ick. I feel like I'm going to be using that. I'm going to get a lot of mileage out of that because it just describes it to me. I often refer to it as the ugh feeling.
Right? I call it launch funk,
Yeah. I
right?
like
You're in
that
launch funk and we want you to be in launch flow.
Yeah. um so when you're running your groups, working with your community members, are there some particularly common obstacles that they come up against, like obstacles to aligning their launch with their energy flow?
I think the big things that tend to come up are, and we talked about this a little bit, is actually getting to the core of their message,
Yeah.
getting to the clarity and the specificity. And this is, messaging, deep messaging and audience work, right? And that's part of what we do. Um, but there's also some people who come in and have struggle with viewing marketing and sales as something to embrace,
Yeah.
as something positive, and a launch as something that can be fun and enjoyable and doesn't have to be super high stakes and scary. And so there's some reframing sometimes that we do, especially when it comes to things like raising your prices, choosing a price that might be higher than you're comfortable with. And we do some reframing around that. There's reframing around, oh, you're going to do a workshop. You are going to go nail that pitch because normally, we'll have some people come in and like, yeah, I taught, for an hour and then I spent 5 minutes at the end and it was a little wimpy and, nobody bought. I'm like, well, and being able to say, no, actually, if you're doing a workshop or a webinar, the whole thing is a pitch and that's okay. That's actually a good thing. And here's why.
Yeah, what is that? This topic comes up in conversations I've had on this podcast frequently because this is just such a big, common, sticky thing. And, I'm no stranger to it that like connecting with people feels good. But then when it comes to like marketing and selling, suddenly there's just this massive inner conflict. From your perspective, like what is that all about? Why is that the case?
I think it probably, I mean, you would be able to speak to this more than I do, but it sits a lot on a lot of that messaging that we got when we were younger about, the used car salesman and be salesy is seen as a bad thing. And if you are, if you have a business, if you are, selling your expertise, many of us feel happier in our comfort zone of serving clients. But really, the thing that is in service of those clients is to let them know how we can help them. And
Yeah.
you're not here to give it away for free. Um, I think another reframe that I think is really powerful is I know that I tend to get better results when I pay for something. So, like, no,
Yeah.
I don't want this for free. I actually want to pay for this thing because then I know that I'm going to do it and get the most out of it. And so being able to say, actually, the thing that we're resisting, the thing that feels is actually the thing that we need to lean into.
Yeah, totally. A quick pause here because I want to invite you into something that I think could shift the way you feel about showing up. If you're a sensitive creative or entrepreneur, and the idea of being really seen and heard brings up fear, resistance, or that, oh no, not me feeling, you are in good company. My free visibility workshop, Let Yourself Be Seen, is all about making visibility feel safe to your nervous system and true to you. We'll explore how to work with fear as a doorway into more authentic self expression so you can share the work that matters most to you without pushing, pretending, or burning out. You can save your spot or catch the replay at annaholtzman.com/be seen. Okay, let's get back to the conversation. I feel like what's coming up for me is like, I think there's themes around taking on leadership because in a sense, when you're marketing and selling, I mean, you're standing up in front of the classroom, right? You're taking on a leadership role. It doesn't mean that you are telling people what to do, although some people do that. And I think, that's something we've seen and it feels icky when people are doing sales and marketing in a manipulative way or
Mhm.
prescribing what people should do. But even sales and marketing done ethically and authentically, it's taking a leadership role. It's saying, here's what could be possible for you. Like, let me lay out a path of possibility for you. And I think that the idea of standing in leadership feels vulnerable to a lot of people because we're afraid that people are going to say, sit down. You're not in charge.
The
Who do you
minute,
think you are?
right, you open yourself up to criticism,
Yeah.
first of all. And it's more so if you're charging for something, because then
Yeah.
people can have something to say about, oh, how much you're charging for this, and what if they don't get the result. And there's a lot in there. I'm not saying that there isn't, but I do think that if we can reframe and say, keep in mind, what are we doing here? What is being in business all about? What is the ultimate goal? And have the way that we do it be in alignment with who we are and what we believe in, and find a way to, yes, I am going to pitch this so confidently because I know it gets results for people.
Yeah.
That energy flows.
And the funny thing is, I think whenever you step out in front of people, there will be those who are triggered by you or whatever you're saying for whatever reason that you have no control over. And might have to block some folks. But there will also be those, and usually this is the majority, that are waiting for you to speak confidently because they are looking for help and guidance and support, and they're looking to lean into your confidence so that they can step forward.
I think that's very true. And I think it's a really good reminder of what we're all here to do.
Yeah. Um, so how do you help folks work through these blocks around sales and marketing? You mentioned like, there's mindset work. Like what is there, I don't know, maybe there's an example scenario you could play out or some
Sure.
tools.
So there's some mindset work. It's funny because when I started out doing this, I didn't start out to be a coach. I started out to be like a consultant, a mentor. I'm like, here's what I know about launching, and here's what I'm going to teach you about launching. And I still do a lot of that. But obviously, when you are working with people in their business, there is all of that vulnerability that comes up. And so I can think of an example of one of my students. We will call her Joan. You know, name saved. I don't know if she'd want me to mention this, but when she came in, she wanted to do a launch for her program, and she was like, "But I don't like launching. Launching isn't fun. Like I did a launch and it wasn't good." And then we went through the entire process. We actually figured out, okay, here's the offer that makes sense. Here's who you're really talking to. Here is the message that's going to hit for them. And here's the way to deliver that message that feels good for you. And she put 11 people in her program.
Amazing.
and and even now, um, she said to me recently, she's like, I was having a conversation with somebody, and normally she's one of those people that loves to give value and forgets to make offers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And love her to pieces. But she said, I was on a call with this person who was a business colleague, and he was going to pick my brain, and I was going to help him out. And instead, I heard your voice in my head, Danielle, and I actually offered him a VIP day, and he said yes. I was like, oh, great. Isn't that a better container for you to help him? Isn't he going to get better results that way? Yes.
I love that. I was just having a conversation the other day with a colleague of mine who this is someone I've met through a business mastermind that I'm in, and she is a jewelry designer and she sells jewelry. So she has a product based business, which is
Mhm.
very different from mine. But she recently, like other jewelry designers started asking her for consulting help to help, consult on their marketing and stuff. So she decided to start offering this consulting service. And she had never done, uh, sales calls, interest calls, whatever you want to call them. It's an introductory call to see if you and the person want to work together. And she was saying, I feel like I gave them a whole um, marketing overhaul in that initial free call, and then uh, they didn't sign up to work with me because they probably already got what they came for, and then I felt really depleted. And I think this is a common problem.
I think it's always that balance between um, a potential client thinking, oh, this person, when you show them your expertise and they go,
Yeah,
oh, this person knows what they're talking about, versus giving them the entire cow,
yeah.
as we
And then
say.
it isn't actually the entire, like they feel like they got the entire cow, but actually there could have been so much more than what happens
There's
on that
always
one
more.
call.
That's
Yeah,
that's the thing. There's always more. And so if you say, okay, well, you should do this, this, and this, end of story,
yeah,
without saying, actually, there's a bigger picture here that we have to look at, and you could probably start with these things, but I'd also be thinking about XYZ, which is true. And when it's all true, it's your responsibility to say that.
yeah, yeah. I feel like that's a good lead in to what I want to talk about next, which is we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording today. This idea of blind spots and why is it so hard to diagnose this stuff for ourselves? Like, let's say like a person comes to work with you once and you help them figure out what their storyline is, what their through line is, what their story is, how they're most comfortable and aligned with their own energy flow in their launch. Are they now good to go for the rest of their lives? Like anytime they launch, it's just no problem. They can clearly see what they're doing. Or will we always have blind spots that it would be helpful to have someone outside of ourselves give us reflection?
So I think the answer to that is yes and no.
Yeah.
Uh, because once you have the process and you actually get good at tuning in to what it is that you want and asking yourself, is this in flow? Is this not in flow? You get better at listening. The answers come easier. But also, there are things that you will never be able to see. I have a friend who says, you can't see the label from inside the bottle. And I have shamelessly borrowed that phrase over and over again because it's so very true.
Love
You
that.
can't see the label from inside the bottle. And so there are always going to be things, we were talking about this stigma that I think people have, especially when you are someone who does this for other people and then you struggle with it yourself. Like I'm a
Mm.
marketer, but I still have people look at my copy. I still have another set of eyes, someone who's not as close to it, someone who's not as emotionally attached to it, to give me a different perspective, because I can't see it, and I should just accept that I can't see it and go find someone that can.
And when we were talking about this earlier, I was saying, this just seems so analogous to me to the fact that I'm trained as a therapist and I've done a lot of work on myself, but I just the other day, literally 2 days ago, I had this just stupid blow up with my husband where it was one of those things where if you're in a long-term relationship, you're going to experience this from time to time. It's like everything was going fine. And then like, I something that he said about something totally benign hit me the wrong way. I reacted in a harsh way. He reacted to that. It escalated, and it was like 5 minutes later, I felt like I was like waking up from a fugue state to everything being exploding in an entire mess. And it was like, how did we get here? How did this happen? And you know, I've got my tools as someone who's trained as a therapist and all this stuff. And so I've been using them, journaling. We were able to put out the fire, but I'm still going to be discussing this with my life coach when I meet with her tomorrow, because there's just I love that you can't read the label from inside the bottle. I'm going to secondhand borrow that from your friend. It describes it in a nutshell.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Um and actually I as like an example of this, you had also told me that you're currently running your program and there are people in it who are taking it sometimes, some for the second, some for the third time around. Why would someone repeat this program of yours?
So the LaunchFlow Accelerator is a 6-week program. It goes through the process of aligning the 5 flows. And the reason that I have alumni come back is A, you're launching a new offer, which means that the offer changes, the way you think about it changes, the audience might change, the way you launch it might change. And so all of that has to be thought through and reimagined in your business in a new way. And also, there's a lot of access to me. And so I will look at anything you send me within the cohort of the program. Want me to read your social media posts? Sure. So it's basically like having me as an advisor in your pocket. And people love to come back and get that.
Yeah, I bet. Are there any other client transformation stories that you'd like to share to inspire listeners about what's possible when you have that external lens to help you get clarity?
Sure. I would love to share about someone who I did an in-person session with, actually, and we were planning out a narrative that was going to work for her workshop. She had a workshop that she was teaching that people were showing up for. They loved the idea of the workshop, but the transition to offer wasn't very strong. She was kind of saying, "Hey, if you want to book a call with me, you can do that over here, please." Right? It wasn't, there was no momentum to it. And we reimagined the structure and the content of the workshop to be able to confidently get to the offer that she was trying to pitch. We were reverse engineering the content of the workshop to go straight to that offer. And my favorite win about this is she hasn't actually done the workshop yet, but
Hmm.
she was using some of that language on calls that she was having with clients, about this offer. And she closed 2 of them in
Amazing.
the couple weeks after we met. So even if you do not have everything figured out, even if you are not running a whole big launch from beginning to end, just reimagining some of the language, getting in alignment with and making some of those shifts that we talked about in energy, people feel the difference and it makes a difference.
Yeah. That's so cool. So earlier you were talking about how to recognize when your energy flow is not in alignment with the launch, right? That we talked about the nervous system, ick, all of those telltale signs. I want to ask about, what are the signs that you are in flow? Because I think oftentimes we ignore those. Like earlier I was talking about, I had it in my mind, like, I need to be speaking live on stage, even though I really love podcasting and it's very comfortable to me. But I wasn't necessarily picking up on that comfort as like a sign of being in flow. I was sort of discounting it.
Mhm. So I think the things you want to pay attention to is what's working in your business.
Yeah.
What do you do on autopilot really comfortably in your comfort zone? Could do this all day long. Is there a way to take that and make it part of your sales process? Make it part of your marketing?
Yeah.
I think a lot of expert-based businesses, we are most comfortable when we are sharing our expertise, when we're teaching, when we're working with clients, et cetera. So how can you take that from behind the curtain once someone, pays to work with you and put more of it in front of the curtain to show people, oh, actually, here's what this is like and get that experience. So that's one way of just recognizing here's what is working, leverage more of it. But another thing is just notice how you're feeling as you're doing different things in your business. Think about something that went really well for you in your business won, something that you really enjoyed. Oh, this was such a win. How did it feel in your body? How did it, what was that emotion that you wanted to capture and bottle? And think about what you could do as you're considering options for your launch that would give you that feeling. If you knew that it was going to be a success from the beginning, how would you feel about it?
Yeah. I love that. And as you were asking rhetorically these questions, I was asking them of myself and I was like, yeah, I know I know when I feel really lit up in the work that I do. And it's not always easy or clear to map out how those could be worked into marketing and sales because of this mental thing about like, well, that's a whole different category of thing. Um, I wonder if I could just workshop something with you here and now.
Sure. this is this is your party.
um, so what came up for me when you were asking those questions is like I love one-on-one conversations with my clients. Like I love to coach one-on-one. That's like my sweet spot. I I enjoy groups as well, but I really love connecting intimately with one client at a time. And one of my favorite things is when they tell me something they want to do, but they haven't given themselves permission to want to do it or to be allowed to do it.
Hmm.
And, I just give them that encouragement. And there's just this melting moment of, oh, I'm allowed to do that. Like that was the block. I just didn't think I was allowed to do that.
Hmm.
Um, and I sometimes wonder, like, how do I translate that back and forth, the intimacy of that conversation into um, into marketing and sales? I mean, there are some answers that are popping to my head, but I'm curious, like,
Well, what's popping for you, actually?
yeah, what's popping for me is having quote unquote conversations with listeners on this podcast, even though I'm not hearing back from them in real time. I can sort of imagine what their questions and responses are. And this feels like a very intimate medium, the podcast. Um,
Definitely.
yeah,
This would be the place to do it.
yeah, absolutely. And then, sending emails, although the emails go out to multiple people, I'm really having a conversation with one person when I'm writing it. So it feels intimate to me and therefore it feels good.
Do you have examples of moments where this has happened where you can anonymize the person but share the scenario?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Um, can you do that? You can do that in writing for sure, but I almost wonder if they're short little videos. That the
Yeah.
podcast is a great for that longer conversation, but almost just the moment of permission
Yes. Yeah,
that could be
absolutely.
repurposed on social where it's just you with a cup of coffee, like you say you like to show up in your living room.
Yeah, I love that idea. And like I'll sometimes send little video notes to my one-on-one clients. They'll write to me with something that's coming up for them and I'll send them a little video note back. And as you were saying with your experience with clients, like when I'm talking to someone and I'm answering a question, it just feels very organic and I don't have to think about what I'm saying. And so I think this is a great tip for launching, just to be speaking to that client, although it's speaking to many.
What if you now I know that this is normally something that you do with your one-on-one clients, but what if for just these specific moments of permission, you found a way to say, hey, I'm going to be doing, you know, 3 or 5 or something of these. Send me, send me a little video with what's
Yeah,
going on with you, and I'll send you a video back.
that would be
And the
so
deal
fun.
is they're kind of giving permission for you to use the answer publicly.
Yeah, that would be super fun. I think I'm gonna do that. I love that.
There we go.
So this is a little taste of what it can be like. That's something I never would have thought of on my own, just because when we're in our own process, I think there's a lot of fear that comes up, and that fear really constricts creativity. And it's not only like your strategic brain that is, helping me see other possibilities, but it's also this co-regulation, with
Hmm.
you're holding steady, you're not freaked out by my freak out. And so it's just like helps get back into that creative thinking flow.
I have seen so many different launches, so many different marketing tactics. And that I think is what gives me the ability to curate for people the thing that's
Yeah.
going to work, is because I've seen it all. And I've been in some of the most chaotic launch situations imaginable that, yeah, I also have 4 kids. I also live in a war zone. Like, you can't phase me.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is like what you just said. I feel like this is what we hear, a doctor say, like they've seen everything imaginable that you could bring into their exam room so they're not freaked out by it, hopefully. This is what I've said as a therapist, people come in, I don't know if this is okay to share with you. It's like, well, I've kind of heard it all. So I'm not going to leave the room no matter what you say. And it's just the same with your realm of experience and expertise.
Safe launch space.
Yeah, I love that. Um, we are coming into our final 3 questions, which I ask these questions to every guest that I have on the podcast. And this is my favorite one, which is if there is a soapbox message that's kind of baked into everything you do, all the work you put out there, what would that message be?
I love this. Can I just say I love this question because it's one of the questions that, as a copywriter learning to step into someone else's voice, I ask specifically
Love that.
when I'm in conversation. I'm like, oh, what could you get on a soapbox and talk about? So
Yeah.
I will give you my answer. Launching works when you are in flow.
That is so clear. Hearing it feels in flow. Like I felt like all my molecules kind of aligning when you said that. It's such a calming yet also energizing frame to hold.
Yeah.
Um and for the listener who's hearing this conversation and they are getting inspired, getting intrigued. They would love to experience what LaunchFlow feels like, but they're also feeling frightened, overwhelmed, like just there's so many things to do and so many pieces to put together, like where to even start. What words of encouragement would you give to that overwhelmed person?
A launch does not have to be high stakes. It doesn't have to be this big thing that makes or break your business. It can be, and is really, an experiment. That's all it is. It's, I'm going to try this thing. I think this thing is going to work. I'm basing it on XYZ. Will it work? We'll see. And if not, then we'll adjust. And so I think if that feeling of overwhelm, first of all, is natural, completely natural to feel. There's, I think we think, oh, launch, lots of moving pieces. It doesn't have to be that high stakes. It can be as simple as testing a new idea on social media, creating a video, doing one free workshop, and inviting people to see how it goes.
I feel like this is wisdom that applies really to all areas of life. Um, so my formative years as a coach and therapist have been about helping people recover from chronic pain, working with the nervous system, and I think what you just said completely applies to that realm as well. People want to know like, well, what's the right protocol to follow? And it's a series of experiments. You're not going to know how it feels for you until you try something. And then when you try, you'll know how it feels. And then you make the next decision from there. And it's just so universally human that we get scared to step into the unknown. And so we contract and want to control and want to be able to predict the outcomes. But the flow really happens when we're in an experimenting frame of mind and when we're in that curious frame of mind.
The faster you can try, the faster you'll know what works and doesn't work, and
Yeah.
the smarter you'll get. So for everyone who's waiting to make it perfect or get everything in place, or, I want to do this right, I give you permission to move a little bit faster, test something out in a really low stakes way, and see what happens.
Yeah. And just hearing that, like, I feel the safety in my nervous system of Danielle says it's okay to experiment. Okay, I'm just going to try it.
I love that.
Um, Finally, where can people find you? How can they reach out to you? And how can they work with you, most importantly?
So you can download my launch roadmap, like my LaunchFlow roadmap, which goes into depth what all the 5 flows are, because we just really focused on energy flow today, at dwcopy.com/roadmap. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Those are the platforms where I'm mostly hanging out. And I have cohorts of my LaunchFlow accelerator starting. We just started once. We've got another one in the fall and another one in the winter. So that is something that you want to have a conversation about. Would love to do that.
Amazing. And we're recording this in August, but this will air probably late fall, early winter. So who knows? There might be a cohort starting very close to when you're listening to this, dear listeners. So check it out. Danielle, it's so fun to get to talk to you, ask you questions, learn more about how your mind works, and just flow and vibe on all these topics together. Thank you so much for being here.
It has been an absolute pleasure. As always, love the workshopping, love the questions, and a great conversation.
I look forward to staying in touch. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.